Okay. And all right, welcome back to the Rock and Mel channel. It's been a while since we've done a live stream, especially with Billy P. I reached out and said we got a lot to talk about. It's been a while since the holidays, so hope you had a good holiday, Billy. We
Likewise.
already started talking and we forgot to even hit the button. That's when we know we're
You
fired up
always do.
to get. That's just us in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about the portal a little bit, and we're gonna just talk about Coach Norvell. What, maybe 10 minutes ago on was it a forum he did with Jeff Culhane?
Yeah, I just saw it on Instagram.
Yeah, it was like a town hall he did, or whatever you want to call it. Basically announced that there's no spring game this year. And he's using the construction as an excuse, but it's not one. I don't know if we have similar takes on this. I have some strong opinions about this, believe it or not. I'd love to hear your opinion first.
So do I. Of all the years, so we were talking before we went on. I've been to the spring game, I want to say 10 or 11 years straight. And I really like, for diehards, to see some, especially with the transfer portal now, to see some of the transfers for the first time, even the way Coach Norvell runs them, more like a practice in a spring game. It was really interesting to see some people take the field. I remember the first time I saw Johnny Wilson run a route and I was like, wow, that's smooth. That was a really well-run route. The first play Jared Verse made, where it was just special teams and he blocked a kick and ran it back. I'm like, so you can really learn a lot from a spring game. And of all years, with the amount of transition we have, to not have a game type scenario, I was actually hoping this year he made it more of a game, because we cannot show up against Alabama where this is the first time we're in a game scenario. Like, that's a mistake to me. Just the simple things, getting people on and off the field, just all the logistics of when the bright lights are on and there's a game. I was really hoping he went the other way, and rather than cancel the thing, make it more of a true game environment under the lights, so these kids can execute together in a game scenario. So that was disappointing.
I'm a huge believer in the spring game. We were both there in the Bowden years, and I remember the spring game was so competitive then. Now I know times have changed. You could lose your starting job with a bad performance in the spring game back then.
Yeah,
you had to play like it was a game. I don't want to hear about the stadium construction, because I remember when Jimbo Fisher moved it to Orlando. Norvell's quote tonight about that was that you consider it was, I didn't want to miss a day of practice. I understand he's coaching with knowing every day could be his last.
Yeah.
But you're trying to get the fans re-energized. It's an opportunity that you lose with alumni and boosters coming in, writing checks on one weekend. Former players, that's a big weekend. For recruiting, that's a huge weekend.
Yeah. Well, and also last year at the spring game, 40% of the stadium was stripped back to the brick.
Yes.
Like, I think it was the west side grandstands. There was nothing there. It was the first time I'd seen it. And everybody was kind of like, whoa.
It was
so there's no way. There's no way it's worse. It's in worse condition. I'm sure that they're not doing anything to the Champions Club that I'm aware of.
No.
Right. So stack everybody there, because it wasn't really well attended last year. It was light. It's probably, whatever they report, it looked like 5,000 to 10,000 people. You could stack all of us in the Champions Club or in that end zone, and it would be just fine, where all the amenities are and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a lot of, I don't know what his issue is with holding a game in the spring, because he hasn't. It has been a true practice type scenario.
And then the second half is like a gimmick, bringing a former player to call plays type thing.
Right.
I don't agree with that. I like how Jimbo Fisher changed the spring game to make it a weekend that you wanted to be in Tallahassee for.
Well, me and my buddies who go to the spring game, we always joke around. It's baseball season, so I don't know why our athletic department hasn't figured this out, where they play. One year we played Clemson on the Friday before, and that was like amazing.
And one year, I think when I was there or after, they played Miami that weekend.
Yeah, it should be like a sports showcase.
Yeah,
where, because people come in and just have a great weekend with it, and yeah, you see 2 hours of football, and you get to watch Jameis Winston throw his first pass, and this year you get to see a whole new offensive line take shape right in front of us, and we're not going to see that. And unfortunately, we're going to see it week 1 against Alabama, christening a new stadium. That is such a bad. As all of it's playing out, I don't know why we decided to do that too. You never.
It's horrible. And you're trying to regain the trust of your fan base. And you know what? It's a reward to the team. You busted your butt in practice for a month. Have one day where it's fun in front of the fans with the band. And you know what? If the stadium was unavailable, I get it. Because I think I think they've done more stuff since then.
Yeah.
It was the early stages last time, even though it looked like
it was more stripping it down. Now they're
right. Now they're working more on the concourse that they hadn't done then.
Yeah.
But that being said, you could have had it in Orlando.
Yeah.
And that was a huge success with Jimbo because you had 30,000 there that year.
It looked packed. I mean, I don't remember the
a lot of fans who won't drive all the way to Tallahassee or fly there. Orlando's much easier.
Yeah. It was a fun event. And even, it doesn't want to miss a day of practice. I want to say that year they practiced at IMG or somewhere.
They came up. I was at the hotel where the team was. They came up that Friday.
Yeah.
And left after the game Saturday.
Right.
They didn't really miss anything.
So I
5 days. I mean, I don't agree with this. I think it's a guy who hates the spring game. He knows he's on the hot seat. I don't know what he does. I mean,
with all the talks about revenue, though, like they really need to figure out how to turn this this could be a big weekend for the athletic department. So, forget what
and Battle's End and all that stuff. Like,
I'm surprised the athletic director doesn't go, no, we need to sell out in Orlando Stadium. Like, that's some real money. I don't know why they're passing up on that across the board.
$20 a ticket, and you got your largest alumni base in Orlando.
Yeah. It is. It's easier for everybody to get to, even South Florida. I drove up for the day and came back.
Yeah.
It was, it's so that the stadium thing is
you can have it in Jacksonville. There's so many stadiums. I mean, it's Florida.
It's almost like he was
have it at FAMU Stadium if you needed a place. You could have it at Gene Cox.
It was almost like he was looking for an excuse not to have it.
That's why I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see it next year now.
Yeah.
The year after. He's never liked it. And I remember he got very defensive after practice when someone said, asked him about, they go, the spring game this weekend, showcase.
Right.
Now he should have I was upset 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Johnny Wilson's first one and those guys.
Yeah.
When they didn't tell us, they just told us game and they charged everybody.
Yeah.
And they spent the first half like working on 2-point plays.
Yeah. I think that was, I want to say that
going to Jordan's junior year.
It was his first one because they didn't have one during the COVID year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the year before the 5 and 7, Jermaine Johnson. And that would have been Jermaine Johnson, Johnny Wilson's first. Yes.
But they didn't play together, did they?
Yeah. I think they came in at the same time, right?
Because he was, not to correct you, but yeah. Because Jermaine was 21 and Johnny was 22.
I thought Johnny was there the 5 and 7 year.
No.
Oh, you're right.
We got him after that. Yeah. That's when we upgraded because we had no size at receiver that year. But anyway, I think it's a big misstep. And if you're Alfred, who's on the hot seat too.
Yeah.
People will forget, like we've been praising him. He's on the hot seat too.
Yeah.
And the admin is. And football is your biggest sport. You're asking people to give more money to Battle's End after a 2-10 year. And they have stepped up. You got the players you wanted. You got all the coaches you wanted. It's supposed to be a day to kind of introduce a new beginning.
Yeah, and just from a revenue standpoint, with all the talk about us falling behind on money because we're not in the SEC or Big Ten, to give up a weekend like that is because the coach doesn't like to play a game. I don't know. That's crap.
And if it wasn't, if you had to have it somewhere else in Tallahassee, fine. You're giving up local economy.
Yeah, they're good.
FAMU would have given us their stadium for a day.
Yeah.
If you didn't want it there, like I said, Gene Cox, there's other stadiums in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
There are ways to do it.
I hope they do figure out a way to get just a ton of home games because more than likely, because people like me who come in just for the spring game, I'm going to go to whatever's happening. So if there happen to be, I don't know, whatever's going on that's in season at that time, I'm getting a ticket too. So they've got to do a better job of kind of pairing that up and making it an event, weekend long event.
I remember I talked to Jimbo Fisher after his first one. Remember, like his first press conference, he talked about how he wanted to make it a game weekend. He said, if the SEC can do it, why can't we?
Yeah.
And the fans really took to that.
Yeah. We've been we've had. I mean, Willie Taggart's first spring game. That was the most.
40,000.
Well, and they reported like 65. It looked like a lot.
It was busy,
It
and
was,
with charging.
yeah. I mean, that was a crowd.
Yeah.
So there's an appetite there for it, but we want to see. And Willie ran it like a regular game. That was probably the one thing he did right.
And so did Jimbo.
Yeah, and
Jimbo did the draft. Jimbo did the. If your side won, you got the rewards of it. Like I like. Bobby did too.
Yeah,
he didn't do a draft per se. They changed jerseys and stuff, but it was still a game.
Yeah, hopefully there's enough backlash this year where they get back to it next year.
I mean, that's some JV stuff.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing as an elite program to not have a spring game. Who else wouldn't have one? Say we're missing a day of practice.
Guaranteed, we're going to be the only Division I school who doesn't.
We've had enough. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm a big believer in that game. It's a weekend that you come up and the Battle's End can rake in some money. Even if it's in Orlando, Battle's End can still have events there.
Yeah.
Rake in some money there. I mean, you're trying to, I don't know. It just shows that Mike is still calling the shots.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, we looked into it. Just didn't." Like, come on, man.
Yeah. If he wanted to, there would be a game. Period.
If the school said to him, "You're doing it no matter what,"
that's the part that surprises
you really don't tell us what to do.
Again, that's the part that surprises me. Whether you like it or not, if I'm the athletic director, I'm like, I don't care. You're doing it,
right?
Unless you want to give another $4 million back, because otherwise you're doing it,
right?
A baseball game and a softball game or whatever else is there, we're doing it,
right? I mean, it's a big weekend. I mean, you don't want the first game to see this whole new thing to be Alabama.
Yeah,
and that's what we're going to go by now.
It's so funny. I'm already excited for next season, but it can all unravel so quickly.
Yeah,
I've lost all confidence in getting excited for Norvell's eye on the transfer portal, which sucks because he did such a good job for such a long time. So it looks like this portal class was much more targeted.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. So if you want to get into that,
yeah, we can because I
can go in the spring stuff for an hour. I mean, it really upset me right before.
We're 100% agreement on that. On the portal side, I'm hoping that this was such a strategic chess move where they really analyzed film and they targeted people and went after them, because it looks like a great class and it looks like it addressed everything we needed to address. But so did last year's. So I don't know. And last year they were big names. They had 4 stars next to
who hadn't done anything yet.
But he had a good track
record. This year's are a little more proven commodities.
Yeah, but he had a track record. Johnny Wilson did nothing before he came.
Yeah, that's true. We almost got off him out of Arizona State.
Jared Verse, the only reason anybody saw him is because Syracuse played Albany. Where was he?
Albany.
Syracuse happened to play Albany the week before we played him, and Norvell was like, "Who the hell's that guy?" He didn't have great numbers.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
He could have gone to Tennessee, Ohio State. I mean, that play where he chased down that running back 50 yards downfield sold it for everybody.
Right, but it wasn't like this. That was it. I consider Verse a diamond in the rough. It wasn't like a proven commodity, because when he came in, we were like, "Well, he's not going to beat Jermaine Johnson," and like, wow, were we wrong? He was better.
Right. We thought he could be, just not as quickly, because he hadn't played at the level.
Exactly. So, and when we
thought maybe game 5 or 6. All right, now he can.
And in terms of like being a legit proven commodity with big time football experience, he did it. So this time, they went after that. The offensive line, I like it, but they, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, and I mean, I like the old Miss tackle, but like, how good is the guy?
I mean, Pettybaum was 2-time All-ACC.
Right, 2-time.
Gunnar Hansen was pretty highly rated at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, no, they are. Even the guy at Vanderbilt.
But I trust Herb Hand looking at these guys.
See, I guess that's the part I'm holding reservation on now. Like, I'm not going to get excited about the transfer class now.
You can't, but it's like everything is with, like, I've had people messaging me, I'm sure you've had it too, where people say, Look at this guy we got. Look at that guy. I'm like, until I watch him play, I don't care. But there's some parts where I say, all right, they're attacking it differently this year.
They
They
are.
want more proven players instead of guys, oh, we liked that at high school, but hadn't done anything in college.
Right. And they had never really, this is by far the best offensive line portal class that we've had, because we always got guys and and a lot of them turned out to be contributors. But like, if nothing else, if our offensive line, I would probably rate maybe the worst in the country in Division I football. And if not, bottom 5, like complete crap. If they can get into, like, I don't know, top 40 of blocking, we have enough talent around all of that to win a lot of games.
Right.
So especially being in the ACC, and that's one of the benefits. If we had Florida's schedule coming up again, which they have another monster schedule, we'd be screwed. But we've got an ACC schedule. So if we have a top 40 offensive line, I do think our defense is talented enough, especially on the back end. And I think they put enough pieces in place where we can, God, I don't even want to say it. It sounds funny saying we can win 9 games. Like, that's not other. I
mean, there is a ceiling for it. It's just hard to fathom it.
It's hard to fathom it. I mean, who would have fathomed 13-0 2 years ago, and who would have fathomed 2-10 last year? So,
correct.
In the transfer portal era, you almost have to throw all of that out.
We
could literally have another 2-10, or we could have a 12-1.
You can't build for 3, 4, 5 years down the road now.
Yeah,
everything is a 2-year window, 3-year. You can't really build depth. I mean, so that's why if we had to do 2-10, and I hope we never do it again, this was the time to do it. Eric McLean, he remember, from the ACC network, used to play at Clemson.
Yeah,
he had a great line. He interviewed Ira Shafel from Warchant, and he said, Ira, you guys are lucky that you can tell those players that you didn't like from last year to hit the bricks.
Right.
Because in the past, you had to deal with those guys and work for 2 or 3 years recruiting while you tried to get rid of them.
Slow burn. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's get out of here. There's guys who we wanted to pack their bags for.
And we are still retaining, we're pursuing and retaining talent in the portal at a high level. We have, I think, the number 5 portal class, either 5 or 6 in the country. Like, and the only people above us are the big boys who are cutting massive checks too. Yes. So, like, we are competitive in that market. I do think, and you made this point all last year, Norvell's got to turn into a better recruiter, and having coordinators that can actually coordinate, he's got to do it now. He's got to get in the top 10 on high school recruiting.
Yeah,
he's got it. If we're gonna consistently be in the college football playoff and have a legitimate shot, and not just make it and get smoked, we've got to tag team those. We've got to be in the top 10 in high school recruiting, and we've got to maintain our transfer portal.
But that top 10 comes from, you have to have a staff to do that. Not even Nick Saban could be top 10 without a good staff.
I feel like
now, I think, and I don't want to say anything, I think he has that staff more now.
Yeah.
We were just not a staff of recruiters. We weren't to begin with, and then they went 13-0 and really thought, man, we can just sit back and drink Mai Tais and the kids will come in.
I think with the NIL stuff, I feel like they thought if we just win games and show we know our X's and O's, we don't need to go sit in living rooms anymore. They will come to us, we will have the money, and we'll have the results. And that didn't really pan out.
And apparently, I think Bud Elliott said we were known, this last staff, as like the least hardest workers in the staff. And even sitting in living rooms, just picking up the phone and calling.
Yeah.
This staff's going to be relentless. I've listened to Staples today, and he made some good points about Malzahn. He talked about Tim Harris, the junior, the receivers coach. He said, I think he was probably the 3rd choice, but he can get you in the door in South Florida in ways we couldn't.
Who do they think were 1st and 2nd?
They think the first one, and it's all speculation, was the guy from Pittsburgh, Waffle House.
Okay.
But he's got a shot to go back to New England Patriots.
Can't pass that up.
I think he was, but Tim Harris was with Malzahn 3 times.
Yeah.
And whatever, he made a great point too, because I like to give him credit. He said whatever Tim lacks in coaching, per se, let's say, Norvell's a wide receivers coach.
Yeah, and of all the position coaches, of all the positions, you're running a route tree. Like, and I don't want to downplay it, but like,
Please.
I'll go the other end. I think a linebacker coach is really challenging. You to get a kid to have that instinct and to trust it and to read the right gaps and to not fall for certain things. Like, there is a lot going on in a middle linebacker's head that you got to get right. If I'm Malik Benson and I'm running a fade, I'm running a fade. Like,
Yeah.
my footwork's got to be right. I think you don't need an A++ coach. And not to say that some aren't, and
You're right.
so much in
Head coach
footwork,
should be.
and I get it, but
Yeah.
it's not rocket science.
No, I agree. Listen, if I'm a track coach and I have Michael Johnson running the 100 for me, he's going to make me look real good.
Right. I feel like
What am I going to tell him to do? Even
secondaries coach, that's tricky. You're on an island, that's why I think it's so good, because what Surtain was good at was being annoying without getting the flag. Like, you don't want to not touch the guy.
Right.
Like, we do not get penalized the way we did under even Jimbo Fisher, under a lot of secondary coaches we've had. Our secondary, it's rare that we got beat, and it's rare that we just had a game with every time we threw the ball down the field, we got our back to the ball and we're face guarding and we're just mauling the receiver.
That was in the guy before Surtain. We always did that.
Oh, I would say the last
was it Woodson? Marcus Woodson, right?
Marcus Woodson.
Our guys had the worst technique.
I would even say back to like the late Mickey Andrews. It's like we've been one of the highest penalized teams in our lifetime, and a lot of it's been pass interference. Because in college, and I think this was Mickey's thing, my guy's better than yours. We're gonna maul you, and if you get 15, you get 15, because you're not gonna get it all the time.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of flags back then.
Because I just went to his coaching clinic. It's funny you say that. Went to his coaching clinic, and I guess Mickey was explaining the play where a safety has to get out real quick and make a play. And every coach raised their hand and they're like, "How do you expect our safety to do that?" And he was like, "Oh, ours will do it.
Ours will do it. And if he doesn't, I'm going to put my hands on him, and you're going to do your 15, and we're going to. That's the probabilities that I'm taking."
Right.
But he also had All-American safeties like every year, so it's a little different.
That he recruited, so I give him credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, the recruiting that was like Nick Saban level recruiting before Nick Saban. It was.
I agree.
I used to take that for granted so much. Even in some of those years where Bobby went like 7-6 and 8-4, signing day would come and we would be in the top 3. And I would be like, "Man, he did it again." I'd get a little nervous, and then boom, we'd sign everybody. And it's like, wow.
We didn't offer guys under Bobby till like the summer before their senior year.
And he was just so good. I wish I could have like seen him in someone's living room, like talking to them.
I've heard stories like from people who sat there.
But here we are.
I'll tell you some off the air sometime. But
yeah, so I'd like to see somebody on this coaching staff has to get us in the top 10 of recruiting consistently.
I liked seeing that Norvell and Malzahn, the first chance they had to get on the road together, went to get the kid from California.
Okay, I didn't see that.
And Malzahn isn't really going to be a guy on the road.
Right.
He can be, but the appeal to come was just coach ball.
Yeah.
We got people that go recruit for you.
Yeah.
You just be here when they come here, and if you have to pick up a phone, pick up a phone.
Yeah.
We're not asking you at this age to go all over. But he went to California with Mike about this kid.
Well, it's I think he's used up. Everything's got to be about results now with him. The one thing though that I'm kind of glad the season's over, because it was such an awful season, and like every other school, like the immediate hope that rushes in. Like, I thought it would be a bad off season too, where I'd just be like, "Man, I'm not looking forward to Bama." But like instantly, you start hearing the news, and it's like, "Wow, I can't wait for the season to start already." Like, it happens that quickly. Where I'm already
this era, especially.
Yeah.
Because how many guys would we have not wanted to see come back this year without saying names that were like, goodbye, like, adios, we replace you. Like, it's pro style.
Yeah, and just seeing the more film I watch on our 3-3-5, that 3-3-5 defense Nebraska ran, it's fun to watch. It's applying pressure, and it's really going to allow our secondary to shine if they're as good as I think they are.
Right.
Because maybe they didn't get beat that bad because it was just so easy to run the ball down our throat. I mean, a Boston College 12-minute drive, you don't really beat receivers all that much. You just ram it down our throat every play.
Right.
But we're going to learn. We're going to know because we're going to put pressure on the quarterback, which I can't wait to see that.
I mean, Staples really, like, I like him, but sometimes he'll say things that just make me shake my head.
Yeah.
He made about 9 or 10 points today that I was like, whoa, like, I can't wait to tell Billy this. Like,
Yeah.
he talked about Malzahn. He said if there's one knock on getting Gus, it's possibly that he's not a quarterback developer. But he goes, you didn't have the opportunity to get a young quarterback guy who could be good. You needed instant results. And Mike had to call somebody he trusted. Because the terminology, from what I hear from Gus's offensive Mike, is pretty much the same. Maybe a little different, which is nice.
The combination of Gus and I'm not going to say his name right. Castellanos.
Yeah, got it. Perfect.
I literally think that is I can win 9 games with those two, and it's a bridge to get everybody's confidence back. Maybe make a playoff run, get people a little bit excited, but it's not a long term. They're probably already looking at like Gus isn't going to be doing this forever,
Right.
or developing somebody under him. But I just feel like both of those options where win now, because we have no choice. We've got to get to 8 or 9 wins this year.
Yeah. And 7, and depending how you look, we'll take it. I would. At 7-5, I'd take.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Depends on who you lose to. You lose to all your rivals bad, and you do
you
that.
lose the Bama by 3.
Yeah.
It's not going to
like 7-5, and it depends on how you look doing it.
Right.
But that's why so I'm happy about that. And you know what? You can throw the ball in Gus's offense. Everyone thinks it's just some power run. It's not. Like,
and
you can throw.
They've worked together. Norvell might be like, hey, look, man, I know your system. Why don't we try some of these things? Because I think Mike does have a really dynamic down the field approach that mixes well with the downhill running game.
I mean, that's what Mike's offense was predicated off Gus.
Yeah. So if he can teach, I mean, it sounds funny saying that, but if he can implement some of the concepts that Norvell had, and Mike can trust him to just call the game that way, it could be he could easily develop a stud quarterback that way.
It's like what Mike really offers and brings to the table, Gus kind of needs for his stuff. But I think they could work together during the week.
Yeah.
Come up with stuff, and then Gus can run the practice.
Yeah.
And run the game.
Yeah.
That's why I think it was Mike that said it's not as big a deal as you think giving up, not calling the plays.
I think he's just
we think differently.
Yeah. I also think he's just saying that. There's a guy who called plays. I mean, that would be hard. If I'm
his first 2 years at Florida State, he didn't call plays.
What's that?
His first 2 years at Florida State, he didn't call plays.
I think he did.
Kenny called the plays.
I don't know.
Because that's why they got him to leave Auburn to come to us for a lateral move.
I don't recall seeing a game where Norvell's not on the sideline with the headset on and the play sheet in front of him, and he's like chirping stuff into the mic. Like, I just felt like
with Atkins, he had to take it back full time.
Yeah. And maybe the Dillingham scenario is they put a plan together all week. And then, he lets Kenny call it until he's like, nah, why don't you call this? He probably trumps him. I don't know.
I'm sure he has that ability with Gus too.
Yeah.
But it's almost like calling in the guy I don't want to say mentored him because it was Todd Graham that did, but it was Gus is that guy he learned from.
Yeah.
Put his offense through him. Now it's like
if we can block,
it's like Michael Corleone calling Vito to come in and like help out.
Yeah. Well, if we can just block,
I
feel like everything else will.
I think Herb is underestimated because I'm so glad you don't have to have an offensive line coach who has to learn the system of the OC.
And he also, I mean, he's probably been the most impressive part. Like I said, I love what we did on the offensive line. Other than, I don't know about the Wake Forest and Vanderbilt guy because
I like him.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you're 2-10. You're not going to get the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And who are we to talk about other schools? But Herb's already attacking high school with a vengeance. So, but he knows what works for his system. He knows what works for Gus. That's why I kind of back off a little bit.
The one thing I will say is like they all have the size and the look of a Division I line. I mean, we haven't had that in a while too.
Can they be average?
Yeah. And just they didn't, I don't know, they didn't carry their weight. I know it sounds like a shitty thing to say, but like I remember just when I was at like in the late Bobby Bowden days, offensive line, they looked like overgrown linebackers. They were monsters. They were big. They weren't just fat guys with skinny arms. And I feel like we had a lot of fat guys with skinny arms.
Yeah. Apparently he likes that for tackles. He likes the basketball long arm guy.
Well, I don't know.
And then if it doesn't work there, well, you got an athletic guard. Yeah. I want some bruisers. I want some maulers. I think Herb does do that.
Well, and the guy we got from
Ole Miss, that look and still be physical.
Yeah, that guy from Ole Miss he fits the mold. I mean, he's a thick guy. So I don't.
And he's already improved recruiting in a short time.
Yeah. No, it's a much different type of player than we've had under Atkins for a long time. It's going to be without the spring game. It's going to be
I'm not happy about it.
9 months till we get to see it.
Now, if we went 10-2 this past year and he announces that,
I'm still disappointed.
We're not happy, but we're saying, well, and Mike we trust, and Mike, there's a reason for it, just like everything he did last offseason.
Yeah.
2-10. We look at everything with much different lenses.
Yeah. I would have been much more excited about this portal class than I am right now. I'm just very cautious. Yeah.
You have to be. I hear Thomas is doing the right things, but I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
He's already been throwing with the players. Listen, getting Deuce Robinson was huge.
Yeah.
I didn't think we would get him. I know his dad played there, and his dad bleeds Florida State.
I mean, I'll be honest.
He didn't even sniff us out of high school.
So. I don't know how we got any wide receiver like Squirrel White. Why would you leave Tennessee to come play for the offense that we just put on the field? Yeah, no, it's going to be a different offense, but still,
he wanted to be closer to home, and even I don't think that's a reason.
We could not have done any better at the wide receiver position based on what we just showed. Yes. I mean, just the most inept passing game I've ever seen at a Florida State by a long shot. And you're going to leave USC and Tennessee and those offenses and those systems and those offensive minds to come here. Okay, thank you. Yeah. But I don't know what the hell you're thinking. If I'm
right, exactly.
It's kind of nuts. And Squirrel,
his highlight wanted to play with Thomas.
Squirrel's highlight tape's insane. Like he
was hurt last year, right?
He's dinged up. He's never really been consistent. Like I watched his highlight tape. Yeah. But yeah, he can move. He can run routes. I mean, he's going to be in space. He's going in the ACC. He's going to get open.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In the SEC, you're going to probably not be as open as much. So maybe that's the thought process behind it. But
yeah, it's was I going to say he can return punch for you too.
Yeah,
which we were not too good at last year. But that's why I'm happy. I was surprised some of the receivers we got, and apparently Malzahn's offense really sold Robinson.
Yeah,
I mean Castellanos went all in to get the kid.
Yeah,
young man. Let me rephrase that. I thought he was going to go to Arizona State. I think I said it to you here. So I was thrilled about the Deuce one because Deuce gives you size and he can go over the top.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember his dad, Dominique Robinson, was kind of a bust. He was a five-star kid. Did you watch that?
Dion, supposedly.
Well, I just like because he went to Florida State when I went, and I just remember. I
remember him too.
It was a Georgia.
Out of high school, he was like.
Oh, he's a stud.
We were talking about like unretiring Dion's number to give it.
Yeah, he was a DB, so I guess to give him credit. But there was a Georgia Tech game that we barely won, and like he dropped a couple post patterns that were just wide open.
I'll never just Florida game. He caught the fourth down.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I will never ever make fun of a drop because we don't win that game in the swamp. Rick Sisson Never happens if it isn't for him.
Yeah.
So
Oh, what I would give for Chris Ricks nowadays, if I ever thought I'd be saying that, because those games were fun. I mean, he was a complete loose cannon. You couldn't.
In this style of college football, he'd have been much better too, because he was an athlete, not the
Well,
best passer.
he was that was Jeff Bowden's a disaster.
Yeah, Mark Ritchie would have been better.
Yeah, all he had to do was stay in the pocket. Like he would take two steps, he would make one read, and then he would start running around. It's like just sit there, man. We had a really good team that
But
year.
now in these spread offenses, he could do some damage.
He what?
In these spread offenses, he could do some damage.
Oh, he would be
with his speed, with his ability to run, his size. Like,
I mean, if he had the wherewithal to pick up the offense, I don't know how much because
yeah, and
back then it didn't look like he had much going.
He could throw the most pretty 70-yard deep ball. Ask him to throw a simple screen to Leon Washington.
Right.
Problem. Ask him to throw to the middle of the field.
Ask him to make more than one read. Problem.
That too.
But a lot of these offenses, you don't need to. I mean, at least not a read downfield. You might be reading at the end or something like that on an RPO, but you're not going through a progression. He could not go through a progression. And a lot of offenses in college now, you don't need to.
Right. He had trouble with the pro style.
Yeah.
He in Augustus offense, you got one thing to do, man.
Really?
Yeah, that's why Thomas. Like, listen, man, we can get into Miami and Carson Beck if you want. I'm not like freaking out about it.
I'm not freaking out at all. Good luck.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be really disappointed in him.
He did not have a good year this year. I understand things can change. He's coming off an injury.
So whenever I look at quarterbacks, I always look at the I always look at the most difficult teams they played that year and how they did. I remember when the Dolphins drafted Tannehill, and I didn't really know much about Ryan Tannehill like until the draft started. And I was like, all right, let me see what he did against Texas, Oklahoma, and I forget Oklahoma State. He threw 11 picks. I'm like, what? The Dolphins are taking this guy. He had great games against everybody else. I'm like, the Dolphins are taking this guy 11th overall, whatever it was. Those are the three hardest teams he played, and that's how he performed. When you look at Carson Beck's, he had a 4-game stretch that were awful, absolutely awful. So, you know,
the Alabama game, he was amazing that second half, what he did.
Yeah.
His defense brought him back in the game, but he was incredible. After that, the rest of the year,
yeah, I'm not, especially with what Miami has going on. It was pretty obvious throughout the entire year. Miami was Cam Ward and a bunch of crap. And
they had some good receivers.
Yeah, but even in the bowl game, they did have some good receivers. But Cam Ward made them. I mean, Restrepo, he's leaving too.
Mm-hmm. And
in the bowl game, they were up big, and their defense kept letting them back in it, and they couldn't keep up without Cam Ward in. And that quarterback, either guys weren't open anymore, or I mean, Cam Ward was a really good college quarterback. Like the way he would stand back there is amazing. They're not getting anywhere close to that in Carson Beck. So if anything else, it's a step back from what they had. And I don't think Miami got better with switching them. I don't think they're going to be a better team next year all around than they were this year.
I don't think so either. And they overpaid for him. That's the thing.
Yeah.
If once you pay that to a quarterback, you want to get any other quarterbacks in the future. And I think Miami's kind of sending a message. They don't want to recruit quarterbacks and deal with that. They just want to buy the best guy every year.
And the downside,
you have set the market so high.
And the downside to that, it's the expectations now that are going to come with it. And there isn't a fan base that handles expectations worse than Miami. Like just because they're so. I mean, look, we went 2-10, and I was gonna drive up for a spring game. Like it's different. Yes, everybody vents or whatever, but Miami, you go 0-2, they're done. The stands look like a high school team. Like you just can't do that. So it's a different level of. And now they're coming in. Everybody's all hyped. They think they got another Cam Ward, and I don't think that's what they have.
And we'll see what they add. Like they say, there's some receivers that are going to join him. So I'm waiting to see how it plays out. Because there's some guys that are going to want to go there to play with him, and they'll overpay for those guys. He's probably got some friends from Georgia that want to go.
Sure.
I think they're still Georgia's almost about their window's about to close on the portal. But speaking of the portal, I don't know if you saw the news today. The coaches are voting in favor of just 10 days in January, and that's it.
10 days in January. Yeah, they got it. Well, so the
So it
hard
doesn't
part,
interfere with the playoffs and the bowls.
but here the thing is, the reason the portal is the way it is, and people forget about the whole classroom part. So if you decide you want to transfer on January 9th, what the hell are you going to do academically? Like the portal was there because the semester ended and you got to figure out where you're going to go to
Right.
school. So like they can vote all they want. I don't know if that's how it works. It might just be their opinion. I think the academic world's going to go no. Like we keep everybody talks about the transfer portal like it's this real thing. All it is kids transferring schools. We call it the portal. What they're doing is switching colleges, and there's paperwork and forms and admissions and all that crap that goes along with it. We call it this magical portal like it's just a football video game, and it's not. So I don't know if that if they can do that.
It's going to become actually even easier because these kids are about to become employees of the school, not student athletes.
I know, but you still
And
have
it'll just be like you switching one job to another. Just give your information to the new job in a computer and you're done. Like these kids are almost not even going to be required to go to class in the next 3
yeah, but that's the part
It's awful.
I don't think that's going to happen. Like I
I hope not. Trust me.
I just if it's the one thing that actually sticks in all the chaos and all the nonsense, the one thing that sticks is work, and this comes from across the board at the university presidents. We are an academic institution, and yes, we have a football team. That whole thing about breaking it away and doing this, that, and the other, that doesn't work. It from the fans, we're all trying to reconcile how we can make this work in our heads, but that doesn't matter. The kids need to go to school. They have to go to school to play for the football team. In order to do that, in order to transfer, the semester's over. You have to find a school, fill out paperwork, get accepted, and enroll. I don't think you can do that January 10th in most places.
Exactly. And then what about like a school like Florida State that starts pretty early?
Right.
And then you got some schools that start much later.
You're already academically
like a UCLA or a USC. I think they're on the quarter system or the trimester or something like that. They're in a different system. They start much later. That's more time for them to get people in. That's why I think they're just trying to prevent it where a kid doesn't have to leave his playoff team.
But they also do you ever notice that when the portal closes, kids continue to enter the portal? It doesn't mean anything.
There's a lot of loopholes with the grad
transfers. But it's not even loopholes. What the Supreme Court ruled was just because a kid's an athlete doesn't mean you can prevent him from going to whatever school he wants to go to at any given time. So if I'm left tackle and it's January 28th or it's February 15th or whatever it is, and I go, I don't want to go to school here anymore, I'm allowed to leave. There's nothing anybody can do to stop me. I may be academically ineligible for the spring semester, whatever the case may be. I've got to make sure my GPA is a certain whatever, but I can go wherever the hell I want. And they can try and put on all these guardrails and stop gaps and all that. If somebody challenges it, the Supreme Court was pretty clear. You can't prevent somebody from making money just because they're an athlete. And you can't tell a kid where he can and can't go to school because he's an athlete. So I don't know if anything they vote on is going to change a darn thing.
Yeah.
They want to pack up and go.
Yeah, we talked about that house settlement, and you were right on the majority of it about the 20. Remember, they're saying NIL is going to be much more controlled, which we need, and that every school has $20 million to spend on their entire set of athletes, and the school's responsible for coming up for the $20 million. Correct. I remember that was your big question.
Well,
the school's responsible for the $20 million. NIL deals have to go in front of like a committee.
So here's the thing about that, because again, I was very up on the Supreme Court ruling because I thought it was actually very interesting. Because I believe it, I remember asking my dad when I was like 8. I'm like, these kids can't make money. Why? They're just going to school, and it didn't make sense to me then. And that's kind of what the Supreme Court ruled. So whatever NIL regulations the NCAA or any university puts in place, if it's challenged, it will lose. You cannot. Nothing's going to prevent me, Billy P, from giving a middle linebacker $10,000 if I want to be dumb enough to do that. There's nothing that can stop me.
And then the NIL deal is
other than
Yeah.
tax obligations. But you
Right.
can't stop me from doing it. So the school now has a budget. All
Yeah.
that's going to, all that did was that was more of a challenge on there should be revenue sharing.
Mhm.
So what the schools are now doing is sharing some revenue, but it's not going to stop Phil Knight from hiring whoever
Right.
he wants, and they'll never be able to stop that. Not unless someone challenges it and it gets shot down at the Supreme Court. So
Yeah.
all these rules they put in with the portal and the NIL, they're fun to talk about. They can't enforce them. They have
Yeah.
no teeth.
I mean,
So
eventually, I think they're going to have some legislation. I don't know how it's enforced. I don't know to what degree. The
there,
House settlement people think things will calm down.
I don't.
I just don't know. Once you've opened Pandora's box and you've been told you're allowed to do whatever you want, how do you stop it?
You can't, and that's what I'm saying. And also, what is the? I don't think the NIL is the problem.
I think
What
it's the portal.
It's correct. It's
Yeah.
the constant recruiting. What the NCAA could have done is, yes, you can't stop somebody from going to whatever university they want.
Right.
But if you do transfer, that whole sit out rule, that's constitutional. If you go from one school to the next, you have to sit out a year because academically there are challenges. You did leave in the middle of a semester. There are things that they could hang their hat on that they could enforce. And I don't know why they got away from that.
Yeah, I agree. And there should be some type of language where it's like, man, you signed a letter of intent to be somewhere.
Right.
There should be a consequence if you leave. But then I remember people saying, well, coaches can leave free will. Why
Yeah.
can't players?
Well,
I understood it from that regard.
people forget the buyouts are a big deal. So coaches, I know it looks like they leave with no recourse, but someone's cutting massive checks.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere. I mean, that's why Indiana resigns their coach and gives them $100 million buyout or whatever it is. Because when Michigan comes calling, Michigan's got to stroke a check. That guy's not doing it. So there is recourse to leaving a university. It's not like if I'm a coach and I leave, it's not scot-free. Whatever there are.
But with Jimmy Sexton,
there are contractual obligations. I guess the loophole is a school like Michigan will be like, we'll pay your buyout.
Right. That's the thing is the buyouts. Okay, to fire a coach, you're looking at big bucks. Them leaving to choose to leave, man. The way Jimmy Sexton has structured all these contracts, you know what Norvell's buyout is if he were to leave tomorrow? It's like $4 million.
That another school would have to pay.
If he decides to go to
you
Alabama,
would have to pay, and another school would pay it. That's usually how it works.
It would be $4 million, where we would owe him to fire him $50 million. Now we were in that situation; we were kind of roped into it, but it's always. I think the NCAA needs to come after Jimmy Sexton in some way. I don't know how you can if he's figured out how to manipulate the system to his client's advantage. I mean, that's
with all the
enterprise, but
one of the things because people get really worked up about all of this. Like the NIL, I think it's just new, so it bothers them. But how good was this football season? Like the product on the field is really good. Like it was a fun season. It looks the same. If nobody talked about NIL, I would have no clue NIL was going on. Mm-hmm. So like we all get invested and interested in the backstories because
we don't see it in the games.
You don't see it in the game. So
we don't know what they're getting paid either.
Yeah, we don't. And so frankly, who cares? The thing that's bothering everybody right now is the transfer portal. The ability to transfer without any recourse just gives the kid the ability to tell a coach, F off. I didn't like the way you talked to me and now I'm leaving. When coaches do need to be hard on these kids. So that's the part where probably that's the most impactful because schools being able to put a roster together is being impacted. But all the money and all that stuff, I don't see how they're going to be able to regulate it. They can put a regulation in place all they want. It'll get challenged. It'll lose. And it also doesn't impact anything we see on Saturdays.
No, and number one thing is, and no one talks about this, is it's not a unified front, college football.
Right.
The ACC has their own rules. The SEC has their own rules. Until we get an actual college football commissioner that oversees every conference and that every conference has to abide by.
They'll never do that now.
No, not as long as Greg Sankey's with the SEC.
Yeah.
He's made that clear. I will never agree to this. Nick Saban's perfect to be that commissioner.
The only way it would happen is if everyone went into the same conference and then they subdivided the conference. It would be stinky.
AFC, NFC.
Right. And I don't even know if they would do that. I think it would be one of them or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I think because one of them, they're not going to want to give anything to the other. Like they're only cohabitating the SEC and the Big Ten because they have to. The SEC would absolutely take all 50 good teams, what they consider good teams in the SEC, in a heartbeat and be like, get out of the Big Ten. And then you do have a commission.
You can't decide now in this crazy world of college football to do that. You had to do it 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when it was a little more of an even playing field. I heard Jimbo Fisher. Maybe I've mentioned him a few times tonight, but he said in an interview, like he goes, I don't get why we don't have a commissioner. Name one sport that doesn't have one.
And all the other collegiate sport, like basketball, the NCAA does commission all of them.
Yeah.
It's really going, for some reason, football, and this goes way back to like the 50s when they decommissioned all of it. Yeah, it was.
I was going to think it was the TV deals that just skyrocketed everything.
Well, it started like when TVs came around.
Right.
So we think all this conference realignment's all that new. It has been going, it's rare we've had a decade without conference realignment since the 50s.
Yeah.
Like all of those conferences, like the Big Ten wasn't the Big Ten until 1980 something.
Something like that, yeah.
The Big 12 didn't exist till like 91, which is crazy. Like everyone
thought it was still a young upstart. Football-wise,
it was a joke.
Football-wise, we're one of the younger conferences.
Yeah. So like all of that I guess the point is, if they were going to do it, they had to do it way back at the start in like the 50s. And somehow they decided not to, and there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube.
I think 70s, 80s, you could have pulled it off. 90s.
Yeah.
They were all making the same TV money, roughly. It was an even playing field.
They could have come together.
Like powerhouses where you were just pushed down.
There was equal enough power. They could have come together to leverage it together like an NFL package, and they didn't do it.
Like, look at Miami. They played in the Big East and dominated.
And the Big East
because they knew they were good.
Yeah.
But the conference was a joke.
A joke.
Now they wouldn't get that respect.
Right.
Unless they go outside of the conference and beat up on somebody.
Right.
Now, because we're all conference loyalists, which I hate, and that's a conversation for another time. Yeah. I think we've talked about that. But it's not an even playing field now. SEC and Big Ten control everything.
Yeah.
So their SEC is not going to be in a situation where they say, oh, yeah, this school in Conference USA, we're going to follow the same rules as them by one person. Like,
so the one thing that I loved about the college football playoff, and going into it, I was telling all my friends, we need this to happen. I did not want an SEC team in the championship in the worst way. And my biggest fear was two SEC teams would meet, because if that keeps happening, they're going to take their ball and go home. And they've threatened it before, and it would be such a mistake. But the people who make those decisions, I don't think they realize the impact. They don't realize how much you do need in Indiana to believe that they can go. Because then Indiana does watch Alabama play Auburn, because it impacts them in some way, shape, or form, because they have this idea that they want to be the number one team in the country. Like, we all watch all of these conferences because we all feel like we have a chance. And if you just limit it, the revenue's not going to be there. And if the SEC continued to dominate, where it was like a 3 SEC team Final Four year in and year out, that would be just devastating for college football, because they're so arrogant already.
Yeah,
it would validate it.
Yeah, but they also they're the number one partner of the number one college football entity, ESPN.
Well, but to
ESPN was not ripping. Carter Street was ripping Indiana for losing to Notre Dame, but not Tennessee for the way they did to Ohio State.
Well,
but he doesn't hide his affinity anymore.
No, but also to be fair, I guess, to ESPN, they are by far the SEC. They are the most well-attended games and the most watched football games. They are the best product. I like the overall. Like, I loved when every conference Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC, every conference had 3 or 4 teams that could win it. So back when the Pac-12 or the Big 12 was Texas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska, and the SEC was really only Georgia, Florida, Tennessee dominating. Like, people forget Alabama.
Just the ACC.
The ACC was just Florida State.
Just Florida State.
we played.
12 was maybe USC.
It was USC. I mean, UCLA was, I guess, okay. Oregon came on in the late 90s. So
yeah, I give you them. Early 2000s, they came along.
But then even Florida State played Miami and Florida, which were the best games of the year. That was like those three schools usually had one of the most talented teams. So we got
the highest ratings.
Right. And we got credibility from that.
Yeah.
That was when football was the best, because if the way it worked out is if you win your conference, you are going to be in the conversation for a national championship.
And Big Ten was always Ohio State, Michigan. Whoever won that game was there.
And Penn State with Joe Pa had some good teams.
They would always choke, but
but like that LeVar Arrington year, like that was a fun Penn State team to watch. But they're in it. And if you won your conference and you went undefeated, you'd be in the conversation. And usually there was only one or two teams that could actually do that, and it made sense. Mm-hmm. But with again, the one thing that I'm really happy about with the college football playoff is no SEC team in the finals for 2 years in a row. Yeah, which is great. I hope that continues to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Because they have egg on their face now. They can say whatever they want. Herbstreit trying to change the story. He said it to us. We know what he said.
And technically, Notre Dame plays an ACC-ish.
They're partial.
They're partial.
They're partial in football, ACC, and everything else. I know we're talking about football.
They play 6 ACC games a year.
Yeah, they're partial.
Playing ACC conference.
They're still independent, and they get all the college football playoff money. They don't have to share with the conference.
Yeah, they may, with the setup now, boy, did they pick a year to get hot. With this money, they may never look back.
Yeah, and they were always like that, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
With their endowment?
No, I mean, but to be independent with this college football playoff market.
Yeah, I think let's say it's $14 million they get, where the other schools have to divvy it up. They keep it all.
Well, and also they had a home playoff game. They probably made $20 million in that home playoff game.
Easily. Yeah.
So and now they actually get to use it to attract players legally, up to $23 million, whatever it is.
I think there's some changes they could make. It won't happen. I'd love to see the second round on the home campuses too.
Yeah,
and then semis and the finals in the neutral.
So the holdup is the freaking Rose Bowl, and I remember them talking about this even back when the BCS. They want it to be on New Year's Day
at 5.
And I would be like, fine, Rose Bowl. Then you're not in the second round. You're just a bowl game or whatever. Like if that's the way you want to be, then fine, have the Rose Bowl, have at it. But you're not going to be part of the second round of the college.
I'm so tired of having to cater that. The schedule, everything.
One bowl committee. Why do they respect it so much? I love the Rose Bowl and the tradition of it too. But all 4 teams with the bye lost. You cannot have that happen again.
Right. And it's not the matchup it used to be now. It's a playoff game every year.
Right.
Like Miami next year.
Well,
Hard Rock has the second round.
Yeah.
And the championship game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Atlanta
does. They have the Orange Bowl and then the championship.
Right. Like Atlanta had the Peach Bowl and then they have the championship game this year.
Which, by the way, I found out today. I'm actually going to the national championship game Monday.
No kidding. I've been looking into it. Not sure.
Yeah. So it's a work.
Congrats, man.
So they're like, hey, you want to go? I'm like, yeah. Do I want to go? I'll be there.
I can be in Atlanta in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I will be there tonight if you need me there.
Yeah. No, you have to go to this game.
Yeah.
But man, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know I tied you up a little bit tonight.
It's always fun.
But anything you want to add in the end, Billy?
No, just happy to be excited again.
Yeah.
Even if it's cautiously excited. I'm just can't wait for Alabama already. Just like that.
There you go. We'll rock in the old channel. We're gonna have a spring game tailgate on the side of Doak. We might be the only people there, but
I wish.
We're going to talk about that even more because I'm sure we're going to think of more stuff about it because I'm curious to see how the media treats this.
Yeah. Yeah, because it literally happened not that long. The announcement wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. What, you've been on an hour?
Yeah.
Maybe not even an hour and a half ago.
Right.
He said it in casually on that thing. If they deal with it with kid gloves, then I know they're afraid to upset the apple cart and lose access. So I'm glad we're on the same page about that. Billy, thank you for your time.
Anytime, man. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I doubt I'll see you there, but if I do, that'd be great. But regardless, enjoy the national title game, man. It should be a good game.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care, buddy.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.